Hi, I'm Meg.
And I'm David.
Welcome to The Average Vegans, a podcast to help you live an attainable vegan lifestyle. We're not the ripped influencer vegans you hear about in other podcasts. We're just some ordinary people living in the South, eating plants and loving animals. All right, today we are here with Barb Webb. She is a sustainable living expert and award-winning author with a new book coming out in April called Getting Baked, Everything You Need to Know About Hemp, CBD, and Medicinal Gardening. She's also the founder and editor of Rural Mom, whose goal is to help empower women with hand-picked tools and information to live country life to the fullest. That's a lot.
Like, you did pack a lot in there.
You have such a plethora of knowledge, and I'm excited to dive into some of those areas. But I'm just curious, what led to you living such a from the earth lifestyle is how I'm going to go about it, because that seems
yeah,
right, yeah.
Yeah, so awesome. I'm from Chicago, Illinois originally. So I grew up with none of this. I didn't even know what a hay bale was. Thought they soaked up moisture in fields or something. It was bizarre.
That's so funny.
That's what it does, right?
So I moved to Minnesota is what happened. And I was in the tech industry. I've always been a researcher, always been a writer. And I understood technology really well. So I delved into that industry. And just being in an area, I loved the country. And so I went and bought a 117-acre farm because that's what people do, right?
Naturally, yeah.
And I learned by trial and error, really. And I just fell in love with this entire natural way of living, which I had never been exposed to, and understood very early on that was so much healthier, so much better way to live in a sustainable way. And being a researcher, I dove in full-fledged and just began to consume and learn as much as I could, not only from what was available then, which we didn't have the internet as such. I'm dating myself here, right? 30 years ago when I started this, we didn't have the World Wide Web as it exists today. Right. So of course I read a lot, and I met with people. I went and talked to farmers and began to understand what that lifestyle was about. And it just kind of exploded from there. And I've continued, and it's what I love to do. It's what energizes me. It excites me. When CBD came on, I was an early adopter, never being shy of the cannabis plant to begin with, recreationally when I was younger. Illegally, because it was not legal at that time. But,
right.
As an adult, as a 51-year-old female adult, I want clarity of mind, but yet I still want the benefits. And there are plenty of benefits to this completely misunderstood plant. And so I was really jazzed and energized about that, and began doing research and going to conferences and talking to hemp farmers. And of course, hemp became legal in Kentucky to grow. And it's gone from there. And I realized that how much misinformation is out there. And I kind of wanted to be that voice of reason that brought that to people. So
what were some of the sources or resources you used to kind of get going? I know you said you did some research and you talked to people. What were some of your biggest resources that really kind of helped you get a good foundation?
Sure. Honestly, farmers, just going out straight to the people growing your crops and understanding that dynamic of they are invaluable resources. What's contained in a farmer's brain is amazing. And then, of course, going to a lot of conferences and networking with companies that were producing pharmaceutical CBD. I went and spoke with some of the actual founders, the people who went and extracted CBD for the first time out of the plants. And so that was incredible. I spent a lot of time with Denver experts. Obviously, that is the source to go to. And I've quoted, there's about 12 people, I think, actually sourced within my book. I am a research expert, but obviously not an expert on all of this material. So I went to the experts, and have actually, they are represented in the book, talking and sharing their knowledge too.
Going right to the source.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's where I find the best information.
Oh, for sure.
Obviously, I went to the web and ran searches and read thousands of articles and thousands of research studies. So I'm not so much into reading like the Wall Street Journal, which is great, but more like Scientific America and actually going to the actual researches and studies that were done by the science community. And because I came out of the tech industry, I understand a lot of the terminology.
Yeah, and that's what's great about a book like yours. It's really you did I kind of did all the legwork. You condensed it down into one publication.
Yeah, so it was months and years, it was like months of writing it, but years and years of research before I ever came to the point of writing the book.
Right.
And of course, the medicinal gardening piece I've done for 30 years myself, just over time developed an expertise on my own in that realm, being a farmer, being a gardener. Taking classes, talking to other farmers, just getting that life knowledge about that particular aspect. And then, of course, going to experts within that field too.
Yeah.
Like, who is this book written for? Like, who do you benefit the most from Getting Baked?
So I wrote it for the average consumer. Honestly, I mean, my target audience is the average consumer, somebody who is perhaps cannabis curious, or is already living a vegan or vegetarian, plant-based lifestyle, is looking for natural alternatives. But it's also written from the perspective of a newbie to an expert. So I've really tried to range it so that everybody can benefit from this book, not just somebody who just started gardening or someone who has experience with herbs already. That someone who already has that experience can gain a lot from this material too, and how the synergy between hemp and herbs and spices is like magical. It really is. And I don't think a lot of people are making that connection.
So is it from the expert to the beginner? So does someone need 100-something acres to get started, or can you have like a little flower box and get going? Or what do you?
Right. And by expert, I mean expert gardener is going to still benefit from this book. Obviously, an expert cannabis grower knows more than I do in that realm, and it's not written for a farmer. It's written for the average consumer. So that's I think that the knowledge contained within here gives everybody a base understanding and really dispels a lot of myths that are out there. And most people don't understand. They're kind of blindly buying products off the shelf, whether it's an aromatherapy, essential oil product, or whether it's a CBD product. There's so many choices out there. How do you actually know what's quality, what's good? How to go to that. So those were things I wanted to sort out for people so they could get a clear understanding of what you're putting in your body. Just because it says it's natural doesn't mean it's the best thing for you.
What do you feel are some of the most common myths?
So obviously the most common myth about cannabis is, THC, right? I don't want to take CBD or anything like that because I'm going to get high.
Right.
There's this whole cultural myth that we created just for an economic standpoint because somebody wanted to make money. They demonized cannabis as a plant. So there's a misconception also that cannabis and hemp are different. They're not. They're the same plant. They're just different concentrations of chemicals and compounds within those plants. So that's the one biggest barrier to a lot of consumers when even they see hemp or CBD is they're like, I don't want to touch it because that's cannabis.
Right.
And so the second myth then becomes they don't understand the natural compounds within these plants are just amazing. I mean, you can make like 20,000 things, 40,000 things out of hemp alone. It's this incredible plant that not only is great for the sustainable lifestyle and, things that we might want to do, like, for example, reducing plastic consumption. If we made it out of hemp, we could do that overnight. So there has to be this barrier, that huge barrier has to be broken, that this is not a plant that just, gets you high or is a recreational type thing. And that also the compounds within it can do things for our body that are miraculous that most people don't understand. So there was an example, there's a research study in Canada where they found out that CBD is up to 30 times more effective than an aspirin in reducing inflammation within your body.
Wow.
So, right, would you rather take an aspirin or would you rather take a CBD pill and get 30 times the effect? And you're putting something natural into your body that's not getting you high.
Right. Always have to say that, which is unfortunate.
Right. So that is a huge barrier. And it goes by cultural class, right? So people in my age category are actually some of the biggest barrier people. We came out of the 70s and 80s where marijuana was a recreational drug and not necessarily associated with the best thing. And so you have a lot of older people who would certainly benefit from this particular compound that are just don't even want to talk about it.
Right. A lot of stereotypes around it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm curious. So if we're going back to the medicinal gardening part of it, and like David said, so if you're just a beginner, like what are the herbs that you think are best for a beginner to start growing that would benefit them, medicinally?
Perfect. So a lot of that depends on what you want to achieve. And that's one of the first things I address in the book is, there's a list of things, whether it's external, internal, what are we addressing? First of all, you have to know what the herb does before you use it. So, rosemary tastes great, but does it reduce inflammation in the body, kind of thing. So if that's your primary thing, but it's great for your hair. Make a tea out of rosemary will brighten and make your hair look wonderful. So there's other external components.
David.
Yeah.
He just rubs his head and he's like, "Oh, my bald head."
Well, it's how
I feel attacked.
Your beard, yes.
Okay, there we go.
Create a mask out of rosemary. Facial masks are like some of the best skin products as well.
That's
So
so
you
good.
put it on your head as well. So things like that. So you want to address like that's so rather than just blanket saying grow this.
Right.
What are you trying to achieve first? So the one plant I think that I tell everybody to grow though, and it's so easy, is garlic. It's like my favorite. It does so many healthy things for your body. If you have a good excess of garlic in your diet, cardiovascular health, anti-inflammatory, it's just an amazing plant. You can cure warts with it. It's like, yeah, it's like a miracle plant too. So, and it's so easy to grow. Most people think these are very difficult. Most herbs and spices are super easy to grow. Most of them, if you want to think about it, the only thing that defines an herb and a weed is us.
Yeah. Wow. That's great.
Yeah. Like, so if we call it a weed, it's a weed. If we call it an herb, it's an herb. And what do they both have in common? They grow prolifically.
Yeah, well, it's like dandelion. Everyone's like, just get rid of dandelion in their yards. I'm like, you can make dandelion tea. It's great for
so good for you.
Yeah.
Well, if you go to Europe, Europeans understand that. They consume them regularly. So it's a cultural thing too, right? What defines a weed? We do.
Yeah,
That is so
even
interesting.
kale. There's so many times I'll drive by like this flower garden and like these front of businesses, and they have just kale planted. I'm like, you do realize you just planted a vegetable that when the apocalypse happens, I'm gonna go to business and steal kale.
Yeah, mint, rosemary, things like that are also used in ornamental purposes. And then lemongrass looks great, as an ornamental plant. You can really make an entire landscape just out of herbs, and you have a beautiful edible landscape.
You just walk out in your yard, have a snack, you're good to go.
Yeah.
Literally.
And they repel bugs and snakes, and these plants do so many things that we don't even realize. Obviously nourish the bees, who are then going to nourish our plants. So I'm a huge dandelion fan. We have them all over our lawn. Our neighbors may not like that,
but it's your lawn, so.
So we're down. We live in Kentucky now. We have a 15-acre property. So I moved from the 117 acres to 15 acre. We have a sustainable farm.
Oh, that's very cool.
Just how to
Very
reduce
cool.
it, go down, nothing too crazy. 15
Just
acres.
down to
Yeah.
15. Still
Well, you
amazing.
asked that question earlier, and I didn't address it, is do you need to have 100 acres, to read this book or to even get into this? No, you can live in an apartment with a patio or
Right.
a windowsill that gets light, or like right now I'm doing aquaponics in one of my rooms and I
Oh,
absolutely
nice.
love it. I'm growing lettuce like crazy that way, where I was growing it out in the greenhouse before, and now I'm growing it in the aquaponic system, and it's amazing. So
My
there's so much
husband
you
wants
can
to
do.
do that so bad. He is
Yeah.
constantly researching it and he wants it like, oh, it's driving me nuts. But it would have to be in a room that I could close off because my cat would be like,
Yes.
lunch.
Yes.
Scale that thing. I can see it.
Oh yeah.
Well, I use our spare bedroom, so I had to
Yeah,
close it off because I have 4 cats.
that's so
You know the
interesting.
struggle.
All
So
right.
there's so much you
So,
can do within the context of even your house.
yeah, I'm so curious. Like, if I, okay, so I don't sleep very well. So, what like medicinal herbs? And the only thing I can think of is like lavender and
Oh,
chamomile, but
sure.
you've got to have something. I mean, there's got to be something else, right? But like, I'm just curious what you would recommend someone grow if it's, for sleep or anxiety, those kinds of things.
Okay. Yep. So two different subjects
Yes.
actually. You hit the two right on the head. Chamomile and lavender, well, they're well known for that because that's what they do.
Right. Hmm.
They're actually in higher doses sedatives.
Ooh.
So yeah, so that's if you want to brew what's called a medicinal tea. And so most people drink just your regular tea that you might get from Bigelow or Lipton or whoever you happen to be purchasing from. Which is great. And maybe you'll brew it a little bit stronger, but that's not a medicinal tea. So medicinal tea, you're actually taking the herb itself, whether it's fresh or dried, and concentrate brewing. I'm not sure if your audience knows this, so that's why I'm going through it.
Absolutely.
Concentrating it and brewing it into a very heavy form. So you would be actually brewing it for about 30 minutes to an hour, depending on
Oh.
what you wanted. So if you were to drink chamomile at that strength, it's going to be a huge sedative in
Interesting.
terms of really getting you into a deep sleep. So there is a difference in how you use the herb as well. CBD is obviously a big part of the book, and it's because it's been studied to not necessarily get you to sleep. It reduces anxiety. So that sort of has that calming effect where you can get in the mood for sleep, stop the brain from racing type of thing. But what it does do is once you do fall asleep, it has been studied and known to enhance your sleep. So it keeps you in that deep sleep mode much longer than you would normally do by yourself. So I do use it for sleep benefits as well in that respect. Are there others? Yeah, there's some not so common herbs that are used for sleep as well, but you really hit the two on the head there. For anti-inflammation, anti-anxiety, there's some surprising ones, like even you wouldn't think of it, ginseng, which is good for overall health, can also help reduce anxiety and things of that nature. So
That's interesting.
so there's a lot of I have to say I have to reference some of my charts off the top of my head. Lemon balm is good for reducing and kind of inducing that calm
Okay.
type serenity too. So there's many things, and of course like St. John's wort, which is real beneficial if you have any type of depression or anxiety induced conditions, or like even manic depression, because it tends to even the mood in a person, especially when you use it at a higher concentration.
I had to write that down. I got very excited when you just now. I forgot all about that plant. I was
is a really great mood leveler. It's incredible. They've done studies as well on antidepressants versus St. John's wort, and they're seeing better overall effects, not only for the body, of course, because you're not introducing a chemical,
right,
just in terms of mood leveling.
When when it comes to medicinal teas, does
I knew we were coming back to tea. I knew he was about to get so excited.
because I tend to drink like a lot more teas and Meg's much more in using CBDs. So and I'm not against it. It's just a habit and
Yeah.
but does so just have a couple questions actually. So first, does temperature matter? Do you need to have it like fresh, hot piping, or is it like can you have the same like chamomile tea or like a sleep tea or an anxiety tea all over ice? Does the temperature matter, or is
No, temperature does not matter. Concentration matters.
Okay.
So that's like turmeric and clove are good for sleep too. There's so many that you can actually just combine and make this medicinal tea yourself. So temperature matters initially. So you want to have, when you're brewing medicinal tea, you're going to have to brew it just like a normal tea.
Right.
And now normal teas can be very selective. So if you buy one perhaps from, a company, and it'll say, usually on the packaging, it'll say like brew this optimally at 120 degrees.
Right.
Okay, to get the best flavor from this tea bag or this loose tea that you have purchased. It's different with a medicinal tea. Medicinal tea, basically, you want to get your water to boiling. Mm-hmm. So you want to be able to boil to extract the compounds out of the plant, whether that herb has been fresh or whether it is dried, depending on the herb. Almost all herbs can be dried and maintain their flavor profile. Some cannot. Basil is one of them, does not maintain its flavor profile when it is dried. So if you want that, if you love the actual taste, you're going to have to use fresh basil to make your medicinal tea. So anyway, you would basically get it to boiling. Then you're going to let it sit and steep for the longest amount of time, usually 30 minutes to an hour.
Yeah.
And at that point, you'll rewarm it if your preference is warm. You can put it over ice. If you can drink it straight out of the glass at room temperature. At that point, it makes no difference whether heat is applied to the medicinal tea, because what you're really headed for is the compounds that have been extracted from the plant.
Okay.
So they're not going to be altered. I guess if you heated them to a past boiling point after you reheated them, it may change some of the effect by diminishing it.
Right.
But that would be rare. You're not going to heat it that hot to drink.
Right.
Right.
So in that case, is medicinal tea okay to kind of batch make, where instead of making, can you make like, essentially, can you keep it in the fridge, or is it sitting in the fridge for, a couple of days, going to just diminish it and kind of make it just brown or some colored water? That's all it really is.
So typically I suggest 2 to 3 day batches at a time, no more than that, because after 3 days, you run the risk of not only it diminishing, water is going to begin evaporating as well. But also if you're using fresh herbs, then you're running a risk of, having some enzyme or bacterial, that's what I'm trying to say, bacterial risk of that sitting and developing some bacterial growth after an extended period of time, like any fresh plant matter does.
Right.
Right.
So that's so 2 to 3 day batches at a time is sufficient. After that, then I say no, because you will, exactly as you said, it'll begin to diminish. You begin to take a bacterial risk, and then of course water begins evaporating.
Okay. I'm just making a checklist in my head for later.
Yep.
Those are great questions.
Normally during the morning, I'll make whatever I need for the day. Like, it's just a morning ritual. And that's the other thing I talk about a lot in the book and just on my blog and in life. Whatever you do, you're going to have to make it part of your lifestyle in order to be successful, right? Because if you make it a special effort that is contrary to your lifestyle, you're not going to keep up the habit. You're not going to notice the benefits. And most of these herbs, for example, okay, if I brew a strong dose of chamomile and I take that at night, I'm going to notice the effect right away. It's going to put me to sleep. Okay. For me, I can't drink a lot of chamomile in that concentrate because I'll notice the effect. It's going to trigger my allergies.
Oh no.
Yeah, so there's some other things you have to watch out for. But other herbs, let's say I'm taking Tulsi, holy basil. over time, which is a fantastic inflammation reduction, just overall mood enhancer, and a good healthy herb for your body. Regular basil is too, but for some reason the holy basil strain has just that extra oomph. So if I'm going to brew that, I'm going to do it every morning. It's just part of it, whether I have coffee or not. I boil that water, I pop it in, and it just sits there, and then I can drain it, steep it throughout the day, use it when I need it. Or like you said, throw it in the fridge for an up to 2 or 3 day dose at a time. That way it just becomes an integrated part of my lifestyle. Every morning when I put the coffee maker on, I'm also brewing water for the tea. So it's not an extra step that I have to take throughout the day. Like, oh man, I got to take my basil, I really like, and I don't feel like it by mid-afternoon. But if I do it in the morning, right as I get up, I feed the cats. It's part of that morning ritual,
Right.
and it's part of my lifestyle. And the other thing about something like basil, you're not going to notice the effects right away. You're going to have to take it over a 2-week to a month time period before you go, oh wow, okay, my carpal tunnel is not flaring as much anymore. So the anti-inflammatory property that it has is actually doing something for me.
So like doing that research beforehand to know which ones are going to be like a quick fix and which ones you have to take over a long term. That's like a first step, I would think, like that, to know that it's not going to be with basil, it won't be a quick fix. That's like important to know. Is that something you cover in the book, right?
Yes. And it is important to know, because that's another one of those myths. It's like, well,
Right.
I take vitamin C and my immune system is brilliant now.
Like,
No, no, it's not.
I wish.
And in combination with other things like garlic, which is a huge immune system booster. So that's what I always recommend, that one, because it's just so overall great. But it develops over time. It's not like I just had spaghetti with garlic and now I'm great. No, it's an everyday ritual as I'm cooking or incorporating things. And the thing I'll say about herbs and spices is that's just the one best way. You don't have to take a lot of supplements. You don't have to do as many herbal teas if you're already incorporating it into your food.
Right.
So we cook a lot at home, which we're doing now with COVID, right? Everybody's food tastes great the more herbs and spices you put on it.
Yeah. Very true.
It's a win-win situation.
Are there any medicinal herbs and spices that to get their benefit, you have to consume or use in their raw state as opposed to dried?
That's a good question.
It is a really good question. Most of the common ones, obviously, like some you can only consume dried, right? Like cinnamon. So yes, but
like I use a lot of garlic, but it's like it's garlic powder because so for example.
Well, you can make your own powdered garlic. I do. I teach you how in the book too.
Oh, well, there you go.
It's really, really easy.
Because I missed that part. I just got so excited.
I use garlic like this. I just go,
yeah.
And that's enough. Okay.
My favorite spice ever.
Oh, yeah, it's one of the benefits of being an Italian woman. I just use garlic naturally, so go me.
Yes. Well, you have a great immune system.
Salt, pepper, garlic. That's about a cup and a half.
Seconds.
All right. Cool.
Well, yeah, and if you really love garlic, like I use fresh garlic and powdered garlic, like in the same recipe, so to really knock that taste.
My mom making spaghetti would use fresh garlic, garlic powder, and like granulated garlic. She had like 3 different types of garlics in her spaghetti.
Wow.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
And the flavor is amazing, and then of course the benefit is amazing too. So the true answer is, for the most part, there's always that caveat. Like I said, cinnamon, you can only really introduce it into your diet ground. It's not going to work in another format. So for the most part, the fresh plant has the best attributes for your body. So if you can make your medicinal teas out of fresh herbs, that is ideal. Or frozen, I should say, because you can freeze fresh herbs. That's going to be your second best bet.
Okay.
Most herbs can be frozen, and they teach you how to do that too. So that you can then just kind of, pop the ice cube in a strainer, let it strain, and then make your medicinal tea out of it. Those two methods are going to produce the most plant compounds and natural benefit for your body.
Okay.
Because of course, when you dry it, you are removing certain elements of the plant, and everything works in synergy.
Right. You can't take one. You can't take beta carotene out of the carrot, but the carrot all kind of works all the compounds inside of it.
Right. Nature is best fresh, right? Yeah, it is. Or lightly cooked, sauteed, or something to that, where you're not really breaking down the plant compounds as much.
Yeah, well, it's like
that's why I don't know how you add garlic. Usually I add garlic towards the end, so that the fresh garlic has the most compounds. It's not getting burned away.
Right.
In the process.
Yeah, Hippocrates said, let food be thy medicine, let medicine be thy food.
Yes.
Look at you.
So that's a great question, but I would say it's never a bad thing to add herbs or spices to your diet, unless you're foraging.
Good tip.
But you better know what you're foraging for.
Yeah. Like, this tastes good. And you're just out. Like, that wasn't the right type of mushroom.
Common off the shelf herbs and spices found in our grocer or our backyard.
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
In any form, you're going to get benefit from that plant.
Right. I'm really curious to hear a little bit more about CBD specifically, especially because David has never used CBD, but I use it on a regular basis. So maybe like in the simplest of terms, how would you describe what CBD is and how it benefits the body?
Cool. Simplest of terms.
I know. That's why I put that there.
So what do you use it for? I'm curious.
I do use it for sleep. At the moment, it's not doing the best benefit. So I don't know if I have the right kind, which is something that I can learn in your book.
What's funny, real quick?
Not only the right kind, but the right dose.
And I actually do use it, but I use it for my dog.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, and pet use is becoming more common, especially for a stress, overall health, and anxiety type situation. So CBD in its simplest form, obviously, is a compound from cannabis, the plant. In the book, we politely call it hemp.
I love it.
Cannabis sativas, it is all the same. They're just different. Obviously, hemp, as most people refer it to now, is more known as the form that does not have a high level of THC. So low level of THC to none is when you're referring to hemp. Anything above that, obviously, is going to fall more into the cannabis term. So that's sort of how society or the farming community has defined those two terms. So as I talk and move forward, people understand that.
Right.
So when I'm talking about CBD, I am generally talking about CBD extracted from a hemp plant, a plant that has no THC, which we all know THC is the part that gives you the high feeling or the very pleasurable feeling from cannabis. Similar to drinking, right? That's stoned or loaded or feeling. That's THC. So if we have a plant that has low THC in the hemp spectrum, that's generally where most CBD is pulled from at this point. Now, if you live in a state where cannabis is legal in all forms, then you will sometimes find CBD products that are drawn from high THC plants.
Right.
And that can make a difference to the consumer right there. For the most part, though, I'm going to stick with the mainstream where it's pulled from a low THC plant. Okay, so it is a compound that is extracted. And the reason they're extracting this compound, just as you might extract THC because it gets you high, right? So cannabis lovers forever have been growing pot to, you know, another term for cannabis, right? We can move on. In terms for cannabis.
Oh my gosh, that could be its own podcast.
Yeah.
I'd be like, how many Zoom meetings do I have to make just to have all the names for it? Just
Right. Oh my gosh.
So people have been growing that plant forever, trying to increase the THC levels, that compound, because they want to achieve a better, more powerful experience. So CBD is found in less concentration than THC within the hemp plant. But when they began studying it, they began to find that this particular compound within cannabis has some pretty amazing attributes. And a lot of this research came from epilepsy.
Oh.
When they found that epilepsy patients were benefiting from smoking or ingesting marijuana products, and also cancer, which it's used generally to alleviate symptoms from treatments for cancer. So they started studying the plant itself as to what exactly is helping, what exactly is, there was research going on before that in Europe, way before we ever got to it. But for those reasons, and they actually, as you probably know, they developed an epilepsy drug that from CBD, which is specifically now they narrowed it down to the CBD compound, which is now actually pharmaceutically produced for patients who have this particular problem.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So, but along the way, they found out that, well, okay, so this is interesting. So you want to say that CBD in itself has amazing properties. The biggest one is an anti-inflammatory. So our bodies get inflamed for many reasons, many reasons that you probably went vegan, right? Because you're avoiding chemicals that inflame the body in unnatural ways. So that's definitely a big challenge for a lot of people. They found that it enhanced sleep in many people. And again, so CBD affects each of us a little differently. So it's hard to do a one size fits all with it. And a lot of people shown to, enhance sleep. And many people, and it's being used now to treat post-traumatic stress syndrome patients for anxiety, because CBD has such a powerful effect on mood leveling and reducing anxiety and inducing calm within the body. So I think former pot smokers might understand that to be that mellow they got, right? That was CBD. And CBD and THC, interestingly, work very synergistically, and one cancels out the other. So for those that do like to use THC, by the way, if you ever have too much THC in your system and it's causing extreme paranoia or anything like that, if you introduce a high dose of CBD into your system, it will counteract it. So
this is gonna be such a weird sentence, but I learned that on a television show. There used to be a cooking show. I don't know if it's still around, called Bong Appetit. And I love this show. And that is the first time I ever heard about CBD, weirdly, on a weird cooking show. But it was because they would make a 3-course meal for the judges using cannabis, but they also were like, let's put in some CBD to help mellow them out so they're not too high by the end of the meal. And I was like, oh, so they really explained how they do kind of counter, and you can control people's high with the CBD. And I was like, that is fascinating. But it's funny that is the first place I heard about CBD. Is this random cooking show that was so fascinating, but they had all the different options, and it was just so cool that I immediately went and started doing research, because I was like, what is this? There's a whole different part of the plant that I never knew about, which I think is what's happening now in the world. Everyone's like, oh, there's more to this. There's an extra benefit. And I think CBD can help people in a lot of ways. I think David should give it a try.
So,
Just saying.
so like my anxiety-induced ADHD type A brain probably could benefit from this. You're saying?
Yes, I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Right. Studies have shown that when it comes to stress and anxiety, and they are actually using it, the military and other doctors are using it to treat PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome. I can never get the acronym right. Users because of its extreme benefits in mood leveling and reducing anxiety within a person. So most definitely worth a try. Again, it's so like everything else, and I always come back to this because we live in a society with instant gratification.
Right.
So it's not a miracle cure, and it
Right.
takes time. So one of the things you mentioned, it's not working for you. There's
Right.
usually one of three reasons, and all of this is discussed in the book, but I'm happy to share it now. There's usually one of three reasons it does not work for a person. Number one, you're not actually taking CBD, or you're taking an inferior batch of CBD, which
Right.
unfortunately that's about 80% of the products out there right now, because it is like the Wild West. It is an uncontrolled market, and
That's
that's
very
why,
true.
yeah, people need to understand what it is they're actually looking for and how to tell a quality product that's actually going to do something for you. So that's number one. Number two, you're probably quite possibly taking an incorrect dose or even an incorrect form. So again, it depends on what you want to do. Like people who tell me they want to reduce inflammation in the body, but they're taking CBD gummy bears, then you don't understand the effect sugar has on inflammation in the body. You really have to understand what you're doing, and you don't want to counteract it, right?
Right. Oh my gosh, that's funny. That's
Yeah.
like something I bet you people just don't think about. Yeah.
They don't, or I'm drinking it in my sugar-filled latte. You know, well, hang on a second.
It's not gonna. That's not how this works.
The CBD.
Oh no.
So it's actually interesting. So that's part of like why I'm like I don't know if I want to get into it and this sort of stuff, because like I don't know. And you mentioned like it's not CBD, or if it's like it's inferior quality. So how do you know? Because I don't want to go, because CBD isn't necessarily cheap. It has at least in my area, it has a fairly high entry as far as cost goes. So I don't want to. I want to, if I get something, I want to get something that's quality and not I'm just buying snake oil that has CBD across the front of it. So how do you tell the differences? What do you look for?
There's an entire chapter dedicated to that, but
fair enough. I don't want you to give everything away, but definitely.
That's okay. No, I'm just saying there's an entire chapter dedicated to that, because that's how intense this market is, and that's how fraudulently filled this particular market is. That it's really important for consumers to know. One of the biggest ways, obviously. And a friend of mine who I quote in the book says, friends don't let friends buy CBD at a gas station.
That is so good, because it is available at the gas station.
Yes,
so
and it's
insane.
available on Amazon.
Yeah.
But Amazon is not allowed to sell CBD. So if you see a CBD product on Amazon, it doesn't have CBD in it. It's
That
just
is fascinating.
Yes, but they're labeling it as CBD because the hemp plant has some minuscule part of CBD in it, correct? Yeah. So therefore, I could slap CBD on my bottle. That's such consumer fraud. It's ridiculous.
That's infuriating.
Actually, yes, prohibited by law from selling CBD commercially. So if there's a CBD product on Amazon, it does not have CBD in it, or it may have such a minuscule trace that it would never do anything. Now, hemp itself does miraculous things too. So there is benefit to using hemp products. I don't want to say that there's not. So one of the things that you mentioned was price point, and that's actually generally the mark, not always, but generally the mark of a quality US sourced CBD product is there is a hefty price point on it, because the extraction process is expensive.
Right.
And so in order to produce quality US hemp and extract CBD from it, there is a price tag attached, because again, consumer demand isn't as high yet either. I think we'll see those prices coming down as consumer awareness grows and those products become more prevalent in the industry, because rightfully so, the cream as another way of saying it.
You're okay.
Oh, that
I'll
was
allow
great.
That. I'll allow that one.
You're so great. I love you.
The coconut cream rises to the top.
There you go.
And those companies will too,
Yeah.
because people are taking their products and they work. So that company is going to continue to see more and more of the limelight.
Right.
And so that's one of the first indicators, obviously, is price point and knowing where to purchase from.
Okay.
So a lot of these smoke shops that are set up everywhere, they don't necessarily have the best products. I buy most of my stuff online direct from the companies. I also have identified companies through research. And research being myself as a guinea pig too, I've taken all kinds of CBD products, for good or bad. When I work with a company or mention them or even cite them, I want to actually know that there's value to their product and it does have quality. Another thing that you can look for really quickly is there should be a Q code on the package, a QR code, is that what they're called?
Yes.
Yeah.
On the package itself. And when you scan that with your phone, it should take you immediately to the test, not to the product's website, but to the test results for that particular batch of product.
Excellent.
Oh, that's a great tip.
Yes. So
Yes.
if it takes you to the website, put the product down.
Right. So it's all marketing at that point. Yeah.
Exactly. If it takes you directly to a qualified test result, a piece of it'll look like a test result from a actual lab that exists, and you may even want to Google the lab to make sure it's an actual certified lab. But if it takes you directly to the test results, it is the mark of a higher end product that's quality, and it will actually have a batch number on it. It'll show you for exactly that bottle you're holding in your hand, or those gummy bears, or whatever it is that you have. This is the test date. This is what we found. This is the amount of CBD within the product. So it'll tell you if it's true. Because there's another problem. Is, let's say you always want to double check that. So let's say that your CBD product is saying it delivers 10 grams or milligrams per dose. You should be able to go to the test and it should show you that is accurate. That's what the testing has found. And often you'll find that it's a little bit higher. It'll say 11 or 12. That's good. It's never a bad thing to have a little bit extra.
Right.
When it comes to CBD, at least. Other things it might be. And if those numbers don't match up, then you're getting an inferior product. You're getting a product that has less than its labeling that it has. So that's often why they'll take you to their website, because they're doing one of two things. Either that product doesn't have in it what it's suggesting it delivers, or they're outsourcing the product from outside the United States. And then you have an entirely different problem.
Yeah.
Because let's say they're outsourcing from India. India doesn't have the same food grade standards that we do. So if you're buying a plant that's produced commercially and manufactured commercially in a different country, that can be very problematic for the consumer who is vegan or vegetarian or chemical sensitive, or wants to make sure that they live a sustainable lifestyle where the plants are actually being produced in a sustainable way, that chemicals aren't being sprayed on the plants before they're harvested, which then makes it into the CBD. So those are things to be really concerned about. I always say in every form of gardening, whether it's your herbs that you're growing or the supplement that you're taking off of the counter, you want to know seed to source.
Right.
So yes, where did that seed come from? How was it grown? And I know that sounds to some people like so anal, right? so, wow, do I really have to? Well, if it's a manufacturer, they make it easy for you.
Right.
There's that QR code right on there that's, zooms straight to the report that says where it was grown, how it was produced, what chemicals were found in it, how much CBD is coming out per serving. It should all be there. that company should make it very easy for you to do that level of research.
Right. And when they don't, it becomes a bit questionable.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So, CBD, well, I see it advertised for like, this is good for anxiety. This is good for sleep. This is good for regrowing an arm, different things. So if it is,
That would be a cool version.
right?
Right?
Awesome. Bring your teeth back. That'd be great.
Are we in Harry Potter right now?
Oh my God, if we were. But how does it differ in the sense of, if you want to take CBD for anxiety, but it's in the middle of the day, how does it differ from taking it for sleep? Because obviously, if you're at work in the middle of the day, you have an anxiety attack, you want to take something, but you also don't have the time to go sit down and take a nap. How does CBD differ? So you get one benefit, but not another. What's the difference?
Okay, so there's two things that come into play there.
Okay.
And remind me that I said two in case I forget. Because I'm going to concentrate on the first one that comes into play. Whenever a product says sleep, rest, reduces anxiety, or anything like that, that's a marketing tactic, obviously, number one.
Fair.
So they're pulling one, CBD is CBD is CBD is CBD. It doesn't change, except that's point number two. It does in some respects. But point number one, it's a marketing tactic.
Okay.
And they can only use that marketing tactic if there's another compound with the CBD. Okay. So, for example, if you see a CBD that is specifically for sleep, it's going to have lavender, chamomile, ashwagandha, mint, or melatonin in it.
Okay.
Because those are the only products that you can make claims of sleep. So it's not pure CBD at that point. You are now dealing with a completely different compound that's been put into your CBD. Now, most of those, like chamomile, very desirable, great herb.
Right.
Doesn't do sleep. Absolutely. Would I want it with my CBD? Yeah. Often when I take CBD for rest, I'm taking it with a medicinal tea that also has other things in it, like ashwagandha or, lemon balm or something. So in combination with each other, they're great. But melatonin, I don't want that.
Right.
So melatonin is a natural compound within your body, yes, but it is not natural for you to dose with it. And it actually causes problems with your sleep patterns over time.
Right.
So you want to be cautious if you pick up a CBD product for sleep that contains melatonin, because you're now doing something chemically altering to your body when you're taking that product. And it's the same for relaxation. It would probably have lavender in it or some other compound as well for them to make those claims. So you want to be very cautious of the marketing tactic that's used on these CBD bottles of making a medical claim for them, because it's illegal to make a medical claim for CBD.
Right.
The only exception is the medically marketed drug for epilepsy.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so that's important. The second thing, and that's just to remind me there was two. Certain strains of cannabis are better for certain things than others, and it's generally because they contain other plant compounds. CBD and THC aren't the only kids on the block.
Yeah,
that's right.
Cannabis has about 100 other compounds within it, and terpenes, which we haven't even touched on.
Yeah.
It's like I have a whole chapter dedicated to that too. So, and that's where you find such synergy in herbs and cannabis, because they have many of the same terpenes in them, and that's actually what's inducing the sleep or the anxiety effect. So in a state where cannabis is legal for recreational use, and you may see a CBD product with sleep on it that is extracted from a cannabis plant, not a low THC, what we commonly refer to as a hemp plant, there may be additional compounds within that product that would help then naturally induce that particular strain of cannabis to be more mellowing. So more for anxiety, or one to be more like euphoric. So I want maybe energy from that product. There are cannabis strains that make you energetic. People smoke them before workouts. This is so that is the second caveat, but that's only applicable probably in places like California or Denver or where they've got so good at perfecting this,
Right.
that they're actually creating products of that nature.
Those added compounds, like whether it be chamomile or lavender or anything, do added ingredients like that affect the potency, for lack of a better phrase, of the CBD, or does it enhance it, or is it just not affected at all?
You're going to enhance it. So
Okay.
it's not going to counteract what the CBD is doing. It's going to enhance what the CBD is doing.
Okay.
But you do need to be cautious of. So, for example, someone like me, I'm allergic to chamomile. I have seasonal allergies, and chamomile is one that triggers them.
Huh.
So if I see a sleep product, I have to make really sure that it's not going to have something that's going to have an adverse effect on my body. So it's not going to cancel out what the CBD does, but,
Right.
but it's not going to make me feel real good.
Right. Right. So,
So that's something that consumers all, and melatonin is a very sketchy area.
Yeah.
I like just to warn everybody, like most people think of it as, oh, that's natural. Well, it is a naturally occurring compound in your body, yes. But when you introduce additional melatonin into your body, there's a range of effects that it has, and not many of them are desirable.
right. And a lot of times it can lead your body to stop producing its own melatonin naturally. So you actually, when you take
Correct.
get rid of it, you actually see a reduction in your melatonin, so you're having more of an issue.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are things melatonin will enhance CBD, obviously, because melatonin is a sedative. It's going to put you to
Right.
sleep.
Right.
And CBD is going to give you a better quality of sleep.
Okay.
So are they working synergistically? Absolutely.
Right.
Do you necessarily want both of those components? Probably not. There's a better natural way. Like I didn't mention it earlier because when you asked about sleep, but ashwagandha, just keep talking about it now. Tends to be one of my favorites, and in many, many people, it induces sleep. So that's a tea to try, or that's a component to try along with your CBD if that's the effect that you're looking for.
Does temperature affect CBD as far as like if you have it in, like if you add it to something that's hot or something that's cold, can that affect it, or does it need to stay room temperature?
Yes, it's a good question. So CBD actually can be affected in many ways. Just like any plant material, light is the enemy.
Okay.
So that's number one to understand. If you have CBD oils or CBD pills or anything like that, they need to be kept in a room temperature or cool, dark area in order to maintain their potency. Light is a natural enemy to any herb out there, period.
Right.
Once it's been picked, right? Light is obviously what makes it grow, but once it's been produced or picked, harvested, light is an enemy. It degrades it immediately. So that's number one. And then also heat is the same way. So heat is going to degrade any or over a certain temperature. So you'd have to get really, really hot to make your CBD potency go down. Your average coffee or tea is going to be fine if you add it to those. If you cook with CBD though, you cannot add it in the first phase of the recipe because you will completely degrade it.
Okay.
So that's something like CBD is usually used in cooking as an enhancement, so I'm going to place that oil right at the very end of cooking if I'm mixing an oil in or a powder in or whatever I happen to be using for my cooking element. Now, I'm not a huge fan of cooking with CBD, I have to say, because there's just so much better ways to consume it. I don't understand.
What are you doing?
I don't.
Oh gosh.
I mean, maybe get the THC if you want to cook with cannabis, like that make more sense because smoking it for a lot of people is not desirable, so you want to ingest it in some other form. CBD comes in so many forms, though. It's from a tasteless powder, if you want pure CBD, to we didn't even talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could go for hours on CBD alone. Yeah.
Classifications of CBD, right?
I use an oil.
Okay, but you use a full spectrum, a broad spectrum, or a pure CBD isolate. So there's 3 forms.
I don't know, and it's not in the room with me. I think it's a full spectrum from what I remember. I'm trying to look on the website right now, but I think it is.
Okay, but that's a great, and most consumers don't know the difference.
Right.
So again, it's covered in the book in
Yep.
depth, but in a nutshell, CBD isolate is just pure 99% pure CBD. In its absolute purest form, it is tasteless. It is basically put into powder. CBD broad spectrum is CBD with other plant compounds. So you are going to get some of your other 100 plant compounds in there, your terpenes, your plant material, everything that works synergistically with that CBD, except for THC. So broad spectrum is everything in the plant, but THC is extracted.
Okay.
And full spectrum means there is that point up to 0.3% THC, which is the legal limit for putting into a product. And again, it works. So then you're getting the entire cannabis plant working in synergy. And so I always say that like CBD isolate is like me on my own. I'm pretty cool. And
Can confirm.
broad spectrum is like me with some good friends. We're also pretty neat, you know, but we're not having as much fun. And then CBD full spectrum is like the life of the party has showed up to, and now we're all working in synergy.
That's perfect. That is so well done. Love it.
Well put. Well put.
Yes.
So I'm a full spectrum plant fan because you always want the full plant when you can get it. And the level of THC within there is so minuscule. Is not going to, you would have to drink bottles upon bottles upon bottles of CBD oil to even get a little bit of euphoria. Okay. It's so minuscule. You're not going to get high. Where broad spectrum is desirable is if you have any concerns about drug testing or you're THC sensitive. So some people are actually THC sensitive, and a little bit can give them either an allergic reaction or a sense of euphoria.
Right.
It's just like some people are very sensitive to drinking, right? They have one drink and they're woo.
Yeah.
It's the same way. So if you're that type of person, then broad spectrum is your next best choice. Or if you are concerned because some tests are sensitive enough that they can pull that little bit of THC element that's introduced into your body, then broad spectrum is definitely your friend. Why would you want to use an isolate? I don't know.
It's like, why be by yourself? I don't understand. This is not the party.
That's so funny.
Obviously, the drug for epilepsy is a CBD isolate. So there are practical purposes for it, but the average consumer is not going to receive the most benefit in the isolate form.
That makes sense.
So that's something to consider.
I think that's probably some of the most helpful tips is the difference between the broad and the full spectrum. I think that's something that probably trips people up a lot. And I think that's probably pretty helpful for David too, because he would definitely be a broad spectrum guy while I'm a full spectrum girl.
Oh, okay. All right.
It would.
That's great.
Oh gosh.
Awesome.
All right.
You know me so well.
We have bugged you enough today. I'm curious what your final thoughts are. Like what would your final, what would you want to say to our listeners? Your final thing.
Oh wow.
I know, because we've gone over so much.
Yeah. No, I think
Get the book.
To keep an open mind, honestly, like about all of nature. Nature heals, nature cures. We come from nature, we work synergistically with it. And if you can on this earth, I mean, if there's a natural cure and a natural substance, then why are we using synthetics? Mm-hmm. Synthetics serve their purpose. I have no thyroid. My body attacked my thyroid, killed it. I have to take a synthetic in order to stay alive. They serve their purpose and they're great. But if I have an alternative and it's all natural and I'm already living synergistically with it, keep an open mind. It's so much better for the planet. It's so much better for you and your health overall to consider these things, and also to realize that there isn't a cure. Okay. And we have to look at a supplement or CBD or a herb is not going to necessarily cure us and everything that ails us. It's going to enhance our lifestyle. It's going to help us reduce things that ail us. But we also have to consider the other parts of our life too. Our meditative practices, what we put in our bodies for food every day, our health practices, how much we move, and our mental and emotional overall health and happiness of, how we're viewing the world and are we taking care of ourselves. So all of these things have to come together. This is one component that I'm very passionate about, but we also have to keep everything in balance.
Absolutely.
Those are the best final thoughts. See?
Oh, thank you.
That was great. That was wonderful. How can people contact you after this podcast? How can they find you?
They can go to ruralmom.com. So RURALMOM.com. I'm out there regularly posting updates and new information as I get it. So, obviously once you write a book, you're done, but as new things come to light, putting it up there. I'll have all the charts that are in the book up there soon as well. Also, they can contact me by email. I am always open for conversation. So it's Barb Webb at ruralmom.com.
Okay.
And yeah, I always welcome a conversation or a question, and I'm happy to help anybody on their natural journey as well.
Perfect. Awesome.
That is wonderful. Okay. Everybody go get ready for the book. It comes out in April, right?
April 13th. Yes.
April 13th. Yes. Perfect.
Yeah,
I'm going to buy my own copy because there's so much that we didn't dive into that I would love to learn. So I'm very excited, and I think everyone should look into it, especially you, David. Look how I just pressure you. Pressure.
That's how you just pressure me to do stuff. I know. It's okay.
I love you.
I need somebody to do it. So
Oh, Barb, again, we appreciate and we thank you for taking the time to talk to us and educate our listeners on medicinal gardening, CBD, all of the above.
Wonderful. Thank you. I am truly honored to be on your show. It's wonderful. And I hope that everybody benefits and could find some tidbit to use, to enhance their life.
I'm sure they will. And we appreciate you being on and giving us your time.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.